For this series, I found this adorable little gnome at my mom's house and decided it definitely needs a companion. But instead of sculpting one from scratch, I'll be using AI to help create it and taking it to ZBrush to modify it. Start by taking a clear picture of the gnome and bringing it into Makerlab. I head over to Makerworld's Makerlab and use the Image to 3D Model feature. This tool lets me take the photo of the gnome and automatically turn it into a detailed 3D model. It analyzes the shape, textures, and colors from the picture to create a base model that I can refine later. Super simple. Just upload the image and let the AI process it. Once I upload the photo to Makerworld's Makerlab and hit Generate, the AI starts processing the image and converting it into a 3D model. This part takes around 3 minutes or so, which honestly isn't too bad considering everything it's doing in the background. During this time, it analyzes the shapes, the lighting, and all the little details from the picture to rebuild the model in 3D. You can actually see the progress bar slowly climbing, which makes the wait a little less painful. Waiting. Waiting, straight face. More waiting. Finally, we got the model. It's pretty impressive how much detail it captured from just a single picture. Makerlab really pulled in the shapes, the folds, and the overall personality of the gnome. One thing I like to do at this stage is hide the color so I can focus only on the geometry. And once you disable the texture, you can clearly see all the sculpted details in the model. The hat, the beard, the clothing, everything shows up nicely. Exporting the model is quick and easy. It takes about 2 minutes and only uses 2 credits to make and export the 3D file. This gives you a fully usable model ready for refining, printing, or further editing without spending too many resources. It's a fast and efficient way to get your AI-generated design into your workflow. I'll be taking the model into ZBrush to do some minor cleanup. This step lets me refine any rough areas, smooth out the geometry, and make sure all the details are ready for printing. Even though the AI did a great job, a little touch-up in ZBrush ensures the model looks polished and professional. Now I take the model into ZBrush. In this stage, I don't really do any heavy sculpting. It's more about cleaning things up and refining the surface. The first thing I do is go over the entire model with my smooth brushes, knocking down any rough edges or artifacts that came from the previous stage. This helps the piece look more polished. I start removing a bit of unnecessary geometry. Sometimes the mesh can get a little dense or have areas that don't need all that extra information, so I clean those spots up to keep things efficient. I go back and forth smoothing, trimming, and adjusting, just making sure the model feels balanced and clean. This step might seem simple, but it makes a huge difference. It helps the model look polished and also makes it much easier to prepare for printing later on. So even though I'm not doing a lot of sculpting here, it's still an important part of the workflow to make sure the final piece comes out clean and professional. Once I'm happy with the overall smoothing and cleanup, I zoom in and check all the small areas, places like corners, folds, and tight spots where artifacts usually hide. These little imperfections may not look like much on screen, but they can show up on a 3D print, so it's better to catch them now. I lightly polish those areas, making sure everything flows nicely. Next, I move on to cleaning up the leaf on the hat. I go in and smooth out the surface so it looks more natural and less jagged. After that, I switch to the damn standard brush to sharpen the indentation and give it more definition. This brush is perfect for carving in those crisp lines without overdoing it. that I slowly work around the leaf, deepening the details just enough so they'll show up clearly once it's printed. It's a small part of the model, but adding that extra definition really helps bring the whole piece to life. Now I start masking the pumpkin so I can separate it from the rest of the model. Masking in ZBrush lets me isolate the area I want to work on without affecting the rest of the sculpt, and it gives me full control over the shapes I'm about to change. I carefully paint the mask around the pumpkin, making sure the edges are clean and the transition looks natural. Once the mask is fully in place, I can safely extract or delete that section without damaging any of the surrounding details. After the pumpkin is isolated, I go ahead and remove it from the model. The reason I'm taking it out is because I'm planning to replace it with something different, a candy corn. Candy corn has a totally different shape and feel compared to a pumpkin, so swapping it out gives the model a fresh look and adds a fun twist to the design. Once the pumpkin is separated from the model, I start smoothing it out. I go over the entire surface carefully, removing any rough edges or imperfections left from the extraction process. In this step, I mask the arms of the model and separate them from the rest of the body. This allows me to adjust their position and bring them in closer, making the pose look like it holding something. Masking is a great way to protect the parts of the model you don't want to change while you manipulate other areas. Once the arms are separated, I can move them independently without affecting the rest of the figure. This gives me more control over the final pose and helps the model look more dynamic. After repositioning the arms, I make sure the transitions back to the body are smooth and clean, checking for any areas that need minor sculpting or adjustment. This little refinement step makes a big difference in the overall look of the model, ensuring it's ready. I decide to give the gnome a little festive touch by having it hold a candy corn. To do this, I start by projecting a picture of a candy corn onto the model in ZBrush. This allows me to see exactly how the candy corn will fit and gives me a reference for sculpting it in 3D. Once the image is projected, I adjust the scale of the candy corn so it sits naturally between the gnome's hands. It's important to get the size right. Too big or too small, and it won't look proportional, which can throw off the overall balance of the figure. With the candy corn masked, I begin sculpting and refining its contours, making sure the edges are smooth and the proportions look natural in the gnome's hands. This step helps give the candy corn a solid, three-dimensional look instead of just a flat projection. I carefully build up the shape, smoothing and shaping as I go to keep the proportions natural. Using the clay brush lets me maintain control over the details while adding just enough thickness so it doesn't look flat or out of place. Once the candy corn has the right volume, I refine the edges and smooth the surfaces to make sure it integrates seamlessly with the gnome's hands, creating a polished and cohesive final look. Next, I use the Damien Standard brush and ZBrush to add the indentations and grooves on the candy corn. This brush is perfect for carving fine lines and subtle details, giving the candy corn that realistic, three-dimensional texture. Now I go over the entire model to check for anything that needs adjusting. Using the Move brush and Clay brush and ZBrush, I tweak shapes, smooth out rough areas, and refine the overall proportions. The goal is to create a realistic grip without stretching or distorting the hand, making the pose feel natural and believable. Small adjustments like tightening the fingers or slightly curling them can make a big difference in how the model reads. After adjusting the hand, I go back and check the arms to make sure they look natural and balanced. I make small tweaks with the Move brush and Clay brush to correct any awkward angles or positions. Refining the arm placement, the overall pose becomes more cohesive and realistic, giving the gnome a natural, comfortable stance while holding its little prop. I placed the two models side by side, the new gnome holding the candy corn and the original gnome I made in Makerlab. This allows me to compare the proportions, details, and overall pose of the updated version with the first model. Ready for printing.